What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another breakdown video, and today we are changing it up a little bit. We're diving into free agency, and we're going to talk about one of the biggest moves the Lions made this offseason. So let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here, and yes, we're back with another player breakdown. Now, I'm going to try to make this shorter than some of the draft videos, and this is specifically a focus on the player. It could be its own video, like how does the defense all kind of tie together. We usually do some sort of thing like that during the offseason or multiple videos like that. Remember last year we were doing like podcast episodes with Rad talking about the defense and kind of the outlook. So those things I'm sure will be on the way at some point when the inspiration kind of just comes along. But today I specifically just wanted to focus on breaking down the player. And this player is DJ Reader. Now, shout out to you guys, because as you know, when we're in live streams and I'm saying I'm writing stuff down, I'm truly writing things down. Now, sometimes I can't read what I write down, but if I can, that's a good thing because I am taking notes. And there was a comment in there. It was my guy. I can't remember who it was, but I saw it in the chat. You know who you are. And he was like, hey, can we get a DJ Reader breakdown video? I'm hype. It was something like that. And immediately I was like, yo, write that down. I got to prioritize doing that. And now here we are to dive into this player specifically. This was some of the most fun news of the offseason. I mean, definitely a free agency. We had multiple videos about this when he came in for a visit. Once it became a possibility that was like, oh, this could actually happen. And hey, he might actually end up in Detroit. It was just like, yeah, he's going back to Cincy. Once it became like a real possibility, for me personally, was insane. Also something I felt so darn sure about when I put that video up that I can remember the night before walking down my driveway saying, man, I'm going to start watching the player because I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. And what do you know, the next day, it did happen. And the Lions brought in DJ Reader on a 2-year deal. And my goodness, what this means for the defense, without even diving into that side, what this means for the defense is absolutely massive. And you'll get a lot of that when we start to dive into this player. But just really getting a proven nose tackle that has the flexibility to range from 0 technique, head up over a center, all the way to a 3 technique. You could probably play him wider if you want to. He could be on the field on passing downs, though he's not always out there like in 2-minute drills, not typically on the field. But you can if you want him to get a proven nose tackle that's played at a high level year after year after year. And now we're waiting a little bit, right? The Lions said that they expected this, that it was going to take some time. We don't know when we're going to see him back at training camp, but we expect things to be fine. They're recovering from a season-ending injury. But to add this player to the mix just kind of feels a little bit unreal, but it's also so huge for this defense because it's been a position that we really haven't found kind of that anchor for yet. We drafted Broderick Martin, and I think that's the hope. You know, down the road, he'll become that guy. But in the meantime, to get a proven dog like this, and I'm going to start with some numbers just to prove it to you. So we know the nose tackle position, it's kind of been a rotation. When Brad Holmes got here, drafted Lee McNeil, drafted Levi, and as he said with Lee McNeil, that was the only true nose tackle left on the board. Now, things schematically have kind of changed. We've adjusted things that we've done, but we've also seen a lot of similar things carry over year after year after year. And since drafting a Lee McNeil and really his transition to becoming more of a guy that's like, let's get this guy one-on-one on guards and let him go to work because he trimmed a little bit. He's looking really good athletically, and every year his ability to get after the quarterback has just taken off. Since that time, the Lions have kind of just rolled through trying to find who is that pure nose tackle for this defense. So again, hopefully down the road, that's going to be Broderick Martin. I think it absolutely could be. They know that's a little bit on the project side. But DJ Reader, statistically speaking alone, before we even dive into the player, I'm going to tell you why this is so massive for the Lions. We'll start here. First off, DJ Reader, who missed a few games last season, had the same amount of pressures, total pressures, as Lee McNeil. Now, what counts as a pressure? Well, according to how we used to do it, and this is according to PFF with 34, it was anything that was a quarterback hit, a quarterback hurry, a sack counted as a pressure, a knockdown counted as a pressure. So any of those things would count as a pressure. For him, 34, that's a good number. Same as Lee McNeil. That sounds great. But here's what really stands out. When you then take into account the pass rush snaps, so this doesn't mean he always is just pinning his ears back and rushing the quarterback. It just means it turns into a pass play. He got pressure on 10.82% of pass rush snaps last season with Cincinnati. To put that into context, Lee McNeil, who I think a lot of us are saying this is the breakout year, even though last year was kind of a breakout year for Lee McNeil. He graded out as one of the top players, run defense and pass rush, who also had 34 pressures. He had a 9.77% pressure rate on pass downs last season. So just to put that out there, higher pass rush rate than Lee McNeil. Just want to lay that out there. I know we did this with Marcus Davenport too, comparing him to Jonathan Greenard back when he was with New Orleans because his rates were always higher than Jonathan Greenard's, even from this past breakout season with Houston, just to kind of throw that in there because I think it's fun too. But that's what DJ Reader did this last season. That's what you have to keep in mind. We're talking about a run-defending nose tackle. That's what he's known for. but yet he can really get after the quarterback. And then again, to add to that, last season, some of our nose tackles, Benito Jones could get some pressure. He flashed, especially a couple seasons ago. Benito Jones was at 6.18% last season in terms of that pressure number, and Isaiah Buggs was at 3.4%. Year before, a little bit higher at 5.12%. So essentially doubling what you had at nose tackle and also a higher rate than Lee McNeil. That's crazy. I think that says it all. I could really just end the video right here. Boom. We're done. Also carried 22 run stops with him this past season. Again, just to add some context, PFF graded him 9th in terms of run defense. Lee McNeil was 7th last season, so now, according to PFF at least, you have 2 top 10 run defensive players on the interior of this defensive line. Then you look at some of his measurements coming out of the draft. Now, right now, he's just about 30 years old, but 30 bench press reps, a 5.33 40 time, 33-inch arms. I think that's huge. Long arms, also not being extremely tall either. Like, you usually get that when you just have a taller player that he has longer arms. But at just 6'2.5", 327 to have 33-inch arms, that length is massive. Brad Holmes has talked about it, having length on the interior, that advantage that it gives you. A 7.9 3-cone drill and a solid vertical at 29.5 inches. So with that being said, he's built like a true nose tackle, but we've seen that flexibility with the Cincinnati Bengals. And we talked about this last year. If you don't believe me, go check it out. When me and Brad did our podcast episode talking about this defense, we directly compared the Lions defense to the Cincinnati Bengals and how things are schematically, and kind of outlined where the Lions vision could be. It's crazy that a year later, DJ Reader is now part of this defense. Diving into some of the notes that I took here, kind of like the draft videos, I'll try to go through it a little bit faster. We're going to start here first, where I have an average grade on DJ Reader, and that is with the first step. Now, I don't think the explosiveness, especially upfield as a pass rusher, is what stands out here, and that's actually what pulls it back a little bit for me, especially when you would see reps against the LA Rams where Steve Avila would just kind of cut him off, trying to get upfield, trying to split gaps, sliding pass protection, not being able to still get an edge in some of those spots when offensive line was just slide protection. But that being said, where he does excel in this area is the reactive first step quickness. He's very quick, reactiveness, especially to zone blocks, the majority of the time, just quickness, getting out laterally. That's a place that he excels as well, kind of getting ahead of the play. Now, it's not always there. There is some inconsistencies with just footwork and getting his feet into the right position, especially when blocks are getting on him quickly and he's really in the interior. Like, again, that San Fran game, first play that we see, stretch play, falls behind because he's a little bit late in that first step. But most of the time, I think outside of that play, I didn't see that happen again. Most of the time, that's not going to be an issue. Also, he carries a really nice low pad level, and this is something that will constantly be brought up, the leverage that he's able to bring to the table as a pass rusher, but a consistent low pad level as a run defender and as a pass rusher that he carries off of that line of scrimmage to help create that initial jolt and then also create it throughout the rep that he's able to kind of maintain. Responsive to the pass rush set. So this is an area where I think where he thrives here, that ability to get an edge comes to his suddenness, and it comes back to the decisiveness that he has as a pass rusher, getting upfield, pressing offensive linemen, but specifically it's the responsiveness that you do see with how an offensive lineman, an interior offensive lineman sets on the play, then being able to respond off of that to set off a pass rush move. Typically very decisive with his footwork in those spots. And even though we talk about it, he doesn't necessarily get a clean edge very often, he does have an ability to get an edge and at very least kind of push the pocket because of that decisiveness that he plays with off the line of scrimmage. Initial footwork can be a little bit hit and miss. Responsive quickness that he typically plays with as a run defender and also as a pass rusher, I think pulls a lot of things together there for first step. It's just that he doesn't cover a ton of depth upfield, and he also doesn't bring just kind of a ton of explosion getting upfield either as a pass rusher. Just a little bit more of that short area quickness, which I like. It just depends on whether or not his footwork is there or he has false steps, which occasionally pops up as an issue, but again, it's not very often. Moving on to the category where I love this player, that is play strength. This guy is an absolute menace. Okay, I don't know the right word for this. I had a good one, but I forgot what it was. This dude is a problem at the point of attack. He feels like a brick wall at the point of attack, and that's the kind of play strength that you get, again, not only as a run defender, but also as a pass rusher. First off, we'll start as a run defender, though. It's the ability to create an anchor. We hear this all the time. Like, okay, can he drop down an anchor, hold his ground at the point of attack? As we always talk about with nose tackles, can he handle double teams, clear up everybody else? Well, here's where I think you see that example specifically. You saw it with Cincinnati. It's on the zone blocking plays where he takes control blocks early, and one thing that he does constantly is play at or behind a line of scrimmage against zone blocks. I love that. Okay, outside of just falling behind, constantly plays at or behind a line of scrimmage against zone blocks, which means that he has that ability to stay square to line of scrimmage. He has the footwork and agility to move laterally. That's still pretty natural, but then also carry a lot of that strength with him that we can sit on the line of scrimmage and not just be pushed back on the play. And that's where you see the flashes of his ability to take two guys with him, keep them from getting up to the second second level, keeping your linebackers clean at the second level if that's what you ask of him, because he keeps his shoulders square, he keeps a pretty wide base when he's moving laterally, he's able to handle double teams at that spot, and again, he plays with a pretty low pad level and leverage into that contact. Pass rusher, what you like here in terms of play strength is the forward momentum that he plays with as a pass rusher, and this is that ability to create walk back, it's that ability to create movement from not even moving, like to be stopped and then create momentum and create force downhill. It's the second effort pass rush. It's the ability to beat a guard, then get into a center's chest, and then begin to drive him back. A lot of guys, you won't see that. You'll see it kind of stall out. Maybe they can't drop their weight back down to create any momentum. He can do that, so you'll get those second effort pass rush wins.
Take this rep, for example. So you're going to see that immediate arm over swim move that he's going to deploy, but then he moves onto the right guard, and the right guard's going to try to set this anchor right here. So he gets in his chest, and as he tries to set this anchor, notice the hips and the ankle flexion there to roll around the block and press that edge of the quarterback. Beautiful.
Very forceful into contact, like I said, on zone blocks, but this shows up its ability to create force from that lower body, and then again, you see that anchor ability, and that comes back to the flexion that he carries. It's a nice ability to carry a wide base, sink himself down, deal with double team and combo block contact when his footwork is in the right spot. Again, occasionally he can be a little bit slow, or he can get off the line a little bit inconsistently, or he can kind of position himself awkward and take unnecessary contact, and it kind of throws off the ability to create an early base, and then things get kind of moved out of the play. But naturally speaking, he has a real anchor in the interior, and my goodness, it's so fun to watch, because with a guy that has 33-inch arms, if you can sit yourself down and hold ground, now you open up so much ability to then also get off and make a play.
Here in this 2-eye technique against Houston on the left guard, now watch him sink. You're going to see him create that force through his right leg, through that lower body, but also through the ground into that initial contact. You'll see the jolt on contact. And then look at the wide base, but he's also not getting his knee to the ground. He's able to just spread his base, hold ground, and be able to sit down at point of attack against a double team.
Or at least get a hand and get that first contact. Consistently see him get first contact. Not always a tackle, we'll talk about that, but consistently is a guy that's going to eat up first contact, and I just love to see it. I'm like, oh my goodness, we have that dude now in the interior. It's amazing to see. Very consistent with the speed to power transitions. Again, specifically that shows up as a pass rusher, and then he's just explosive into that backside contact. You'll see this specifically on down blocks. Maybe his guard's pulling away from him, and the down blocks coming down to kind of seal off the block. Maybe you'll see it as a zone block, but the down blocks, when he's able to, again, be very responsive, see the puller get away from him, football intelligence, just holds his ground. He just halts it at the point of attack, just stonewalls guys at the point of attack in those spots. You just get to see that strength. He has that lower body strength again to deal with those double team blocks. Again, the flexion that he carries along with it allows him to play from a zero technique to kind of work your way out. And when you can do that, now you can up what everybody else can do around you. I mean, you can play 4-0-4 fronts, right? You can play a lot of different tight fronts, play a lot of different front looks that you want to a front, because he can move around as well. Now, onto the pass rush side of things, this is an area that I think you have to continue to watch, and it'll grow on you. It will really grow on you, because it started lower and it just kind of slowly worked its way up. Now, a lot of this has to do with who are you going against. If you're going against an offensive line that struggles like Houston a little bit, it was a nightmare. I mean, he absolutely destroyed Houston. It just felt like every play he was in the backfield. There's other games where you just don't feel that presence much. We know that that's a factor, is who you are going against. That's a massive factor. That being said, though, even if we just take the statistics out of it, the more and more you watch him, the more and more you fall in love with his ability to actually give you some pass rush upside. I'm not going to sit here and say that this was the best pass rusher on the market. You can make an argument that's Christian Wilkins if you want to, though this is, again, just, to me, he just fits a lot better. This is what we needed. It's also more diverse for the run defense aspect. The quarterback is pressing a very good grade for me, and this kind of continued to work up. Initially, I had it good before I even did this breakdown when we initially signed him, and it slightly moved up, just kind of a tick for me here. The explosiveness off the line of scrimmage can lack a little bit, and one issue that I do have is also the lack of slither. So this really shows up when you're talking about not only creating an edge, but being able to finish in those spots where he gets on the shoulder off offensive lineman, the ability to get clean, get downhill, and actually make a play and finish the play. His lack of slither, you also see it feels like a lot of times kind of a lack of plan, especially when double teams get on him early and there's not a lot that he can do to kind of win. You also see him stall out in bull rush attempts. You don't really see a consistent counter. Once a guard stalls out, you might get the initial pop, the initial move, that initial forward momentum that he's able to create that force and kind of create initial walk back, but ultimately it does seem to kind of just die out on him. And then at that point, you don't really see kind of that creativity in terms of the ability to counter off it and still get a win, that second effort win, or even that slither and agility to kind of just slide off of blocks once he gets that initial knot back. So there are areas that he's limited here. I also think occasionally his ability to transition from handling a zone block to then getting upfield can be inconsistent, just the fluidity within transitioning from playing to run to rush and to passer. That being said, though, he carries so many traits that transition to not only having a deep arsenal, but just winning as a pass rusher. But he shows a lot of different ways to win. And sometimes it's just flash, like you'll see like a late spin move and he's kind of just getting off a block. But he has a very deep arsenal as a pass rusher. We start here. It's the strength. It's the hips. It's the core strength that he carries with him. Very strong. As I said, very strong in the upper body, but he also creates a lot of force from the lower body, and that carries over really well as a pass rusher. His ability to go from a stop and then create that forward momentum and create that force opens up walk back opportunities, opens up second pass rush effort opportunities. And again, for most guys where things will stall out, you'll just kind of see him restart it, and it's just like, here's the push again. He does not give up on plays. He plays with a very high motor as a pass rusher. Don't like here, and this kind of comes back to the hands a little bit, is how often his chest feels like it's exposed, and he'll get into your offensive line that'll kind of latch up on him, or if they jump set, they'll get into his chest quickly, and things will kind of die out a little bit. But what he does bring to the table is plus short area quickness and real decisiveness as a pass rusher. He plays with suddenness, and you don't really see it by his testing scores, but you see it when you watch him, how quickly things happen and how quickly he gets the corner on an offensive lineman. And once he feels that, he's going to just drive. And that ability to create walk back, create that lower body force, and also create that forward momentum, but also leverage. He's constantly a pass rusher that rushes with that downhill leverage. All of a sudden, you just get kind of a collapsing pocket consistently from the interior, and that ability to at very least get on the shoulder of an offensive lineman, because he's very decisive. He's very sudden in those spots. He's going to put you on your toes as an offensive lineman because he's very decisive with his decisions there. We'll add on to that in a second, but I want to go back to some of the run defense here with the ability to shed as a run defender. Now, this scenario, I have him a little bit above average in this category. What I like here is the flexibility. This is where you talk about ability to two gap, right? Okay, hey, don't let guys to get to the second level. You see that ability. You see the length to kind of hold his ground. Handling single blocks, that's very consistent within his game. But then it's also that gap and a half ability to not only play maybe the B gap, but also press it through the A gap. That gap and a half ability is there as well. And that comes back to something that he also does as a pass rusher, which is occasionally open up kind of the long arm move. And again, you'll see this within his hips. You'll see it within his lockout length, where he'll create kind of a long arm move and he'll be able to kind of walk you back. He can also bring that to the table as a run defender in terms of playing that gap and a half role to be able to sink his weight and kind of just slowly work you into the other gap, while also then being able to maintain vision. Something that with every defensive lineman, it feels like we brought in. Mekhi Wingo, same thing. Vision is massive, and he has really strong vision. Pass rush and run defense, very strong vision, seems to always know where the football is, and at very least, it's vision based on the run scheme, where he tries to get ahead of the run play, so I do like that. Consistency with the shed. What's knocks here for me is that the base is inconsistent in terms of, like, especially against down blocks, things can get a little bit linear, he'll get a little bit upright, doesn't always stay consistently wide, and that can throw off his ability to really stack and shed. Does well is that his feet are constantly on the ground for himself, because he keeps that short area of foot quickness and keeps his feet consistently on the ground. Now, you will get inconsistency in terms of just balance here. That is something that probably pops up the most, is how often that he is on the ground. You don't love it. You do love the athlete and his ability to recover and get off the ground. That's something that shines. He's like, this dude's 327. He's getting off the ground like that. But he is on the ground probably too often for what you would like. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. Again, back to the shed ability. It's also just kind of the technical side, the ability to corkscrew down. I don't love it. I just feel like sometimes he's just a little bit late to shed. Not always as proactive as you would like to see. And there's also the flip side, where even in gap and a half looks, where he may play too far into another gap, get a little bit eager to kind of like, I got to go make this play, pull himself out of the gap. That may point a little bit more towards the discipline area, which also shows up as a pass rusher, where occasionally he'll kind of get out of his assignment. It feels like, of like, okay, the pass rush stalled, let's just kind of keep an eye on a quarterback, and he just pulls himself a little bit out of the play. That can show up as a run defender too, where he'll kind of just play himself out of a gap, maybe just trying to do a little bit too much. And again, not always just being super proactive, so trusting his ability to hold ground, and then make a play, and he can create lanes. If everybody else handles their job, it'll be fine, but they can create like wide kind of rounding angles that can get around him, and he's unable to finish in some of those spots. Pulls me on to kind of the hand usage here, and again, it's the versatility. It's the early swim moves that you see as a pass rusher. It's the long arm upside you see as a pass rusher. It's even the occasional spin moves, but even though that's not as much to the hand usage. Consistency, rolling over blocks, working over blocks with the hand usage. Man, there is real force when he punches you in your chest. He's got knockback. He's got heavy hands at the point of attack, and he's very consistent, as I touched on, rolling over blocks. And I think you see this within the footwork. It's also just kind of the mentality that he plays with, like the want to get over blocks, and then just out of that core strength to just work himself over the play. Not always balanced, On the ground a little bit too often in these spots, but very consistent at finding a way to at least get from, hey, I'm in this A gap, I'm going to flip over to that A gap, and I'm going to do it through the center that's trying to block me on the play. Very consistent spots. Best aspect here is probably fast hands. Very fast hands as a pass rusher specifically. He's very decisive, very fast with hands, comes in with a plan, and you'll see this, especially to me, when he beats a guard and then he's on to the center, or he beats the center, he's on to the guard. Very fast hands, like boom, I'm right back in your chest, now I'm working off of that. Very fast. Now, not always accurate, and again, to me, some of the lack of slither especially shows up when guys kind of just punch him in the chest, especially when he's trying to cross face, even though the hands are sometimes there, you just don't see that. But very fast hand as a pass rusher and plus length, which is huge, especially when you talk about finishing as a run defender, but also just kind of finding contact as a run defender as well. I love the way that he locks out on the backside of zones. Again, you'll see this in kind of the walk back too, but kind of that consistency on the backside. He uses inside arm, lock himself out, and again, kind of play at that line of scrimmage, but also maintain force when he's doing that. Back to the strength aspects, he has that arm over pass rush move, which is one of the most fun things to watch, when he's able to kind of sink himself down, create that core momentum, and just kind of roll over offensive linemen, and then it's kind of like back to how he works over blocks, when he's able to use that arm over move and then get pressure. We see Aleem McNeil utilize this a lot, a little bit lower to the ground, utilize that force from the ground. He does kind of the same thing, right? Does the same kind of look with better length at 33-inch arms. That's something that he does really well. It's going to be so cool to have two guys that can do that, by the way. Body control, this is where you get some real inconsistency. No question here, you get some inconsistency. He's on the ground too often. He plays over his toes a little bit, plays a little bit over his skis, especially looking for contact, maybe being a little bit aggressive upfield at times, and just kind of falls over himself, trying to create kind of that leverage upfield, and he just doesn't have his feet underneath him all the time. He consistently plays with leverage, but he will lose control trying to maintain and hold his gap. Again, just kind of getting over his toes, or getting in a spot where his feet are not underneath him, or getting his feet and stepping on another player around him. He's not the most nimble player in traffic, I will say that, and this can show up as an issue because you'll lose opportunities to finish on the play, because too often it'll look like he's diving and he's just kind of on the ground reaching out for tackles. It's a little bit too often. He has adequate ability to kind of pause when he's working upfield, get back in the screens, recover on the play. Probably the best aspect of body control, specifically in the lower body, more so to agility, which we're about to talk about, but it's that ability to corner. It's his cornering ability, which again, you don't expect from a guy at his size. It's cornering once he gets to the backfield, tracking down the quarterback. It's just kind of weaving with quarterbacks in the backfield. He's not going to track down Lamar Jackson. Okay, that's not what I'm saying, but he's not going to just get upfield and run directly past you on the play. Mekhi Wingo has some of this as well, that cornering. You guys remember we talked about that? He brings that to the table as well. That comes back to the ankle flexion that he carries, that ability to kind of corner when he's tracking guys into the backfield. It's a huge aspect, and it shows up in just terms of getting back into the play, right? Getting back into the play that gets away from him on screens in those kind of situations. And also some contact balance. He does show some real contact balance with the amount of force that he plays with, his ability to kind of just pinball off of blocks and continue to work himself down upfield, create that second effort movement. There's real ability there. The issue becomes he gets a little bit too linear. All of a sudden, his body control kind of goes out the window, especially when he's trying to split gaps. He gets very vertical, and then when he gets to that spot, he loses that wide base. He gets knocked off on the play. That will pop up in the recovery. It's the recovery off the ground. The quickness that he gets off the ground with, the ability to still make plays on the ground. He is a natural athlete, and that shows really all you need to know in those spots. Footwork that is very controlled within his first step. Run defender, pass rusher, very responsive in those spots. He plays with good control in those spots. Now, he is a little bit slow getting an edge and getting upfield, and you'll see that when he tries to kind of attempt some of his swim moves. But where you really see the agility is dealing with wide zones. And we know there's certain teams, Ravens, San Fran, off the top of my head, Cleveland maybe do this, that utilize wide zone plays. They want to get wide. They want to make you work. He'll play over a zero technique. His ability to move laterally like he does, it really just comes down to, was his first step accurate or does he fall behind? But if he does not fall behind, his ability to move laterally, stay square to the line of scrimmage, some of the best agility you'll find. It is so impressive, but also then play through contact and not just kind of get walled back as he's just turning and running. That is some of the best stuff that you'll see. It is absolutely beautiful to watch, and that wide zone ability opens up so much vision within his game because he can constantly find the quarterback or find the ball carrier because the vision that he plays with. Recovery, lateral quickness, this is huge too. Again, working over blocks, falling behind a little bit, being able to recover laterally. Where he lacks some agility, though, is jump sets, having that slither, having that shake to kind of just make guys miss. Interior alignment consistently pay for lunging or whiffing and kind of those initial strikes. strikes. You don't always get that. And I would say too often that inability to always close, even if they do miss that first strike, you then allow offensive linemen to kind of recover. He allows too much recovery on the interior, and I don't think there's much you can do about that. He's not going to get those clean wins just because an offensive lineman missed. There's going to usually be recovery there. Now, you might be able to create some knockback, but you're not going to get a lot of clean wins, specifically in the interior as a pass rusher. What you don't like here is, again, back to the body control side when he's just on the ground, especially on the backside when he's dealing with contact. As a tackler, I wish this was a little bit better in just terms of consistency as a finisher. He has the length to finish, has the ability to work over blocks, has the ability to fit into multiple different schemes that you want up front. I love his closing burst, probably one of the best traits here. Pass rusher, also as a run defender, that ability to just kind of close, create that burst, that motor, that energy. He just finds like another gear when he kind of targets onto a ball carrier. And then in space, you see some of that agility pop up where you're like, hey, this ain't too bad. He's kind of working with the guy in space here. You see that real closing burst that he has in those opportunities. And then it's that cornering ability once he gets behind that backfield. That's super impressive. But too often he finds himself on the ground. Too often here it turns to kind of like a lunge and a dive, and he's kind of just reaching out for legs, not always staying on his feet. I don't love that. Naturally, being low to the ground does help him in this area a little bit here. And then again, being more proactive in the shed could probably help him out a little bit as well. From the football intelligence side, very adaptive to different run blocking schemes. He's very fast to deal with pullers, and you'll see that, how responsive he is in those spots. He will pull himself out of plays. You will get some inconsistent discipline, I think, occasionally as well. But you do see real recognition. You see real awareness. And then also, because some of the ability there, you'll also see ability to open up slants, loops, specifically loops. Occasionally he'll be lined up late. I think that's more so of a team thing where they don't get him lined up as quick. But in terms of like looping on the play, it opens up some pass rush flexibility of where you can just align him. I think there's real football intelligence here, and he's just very responsive and decisive. That's the biggest thing. There's not a lot of second guessing. Even though sometimes he's wrong, there's not a lot of second guessing in this game. And then over to kind of the flexibility and the discipline that he plays with. Flexibility to turn the corner at the top of the rush. It's the ability to do with outside zones consistently. It's the ankle flexion that he carries as a pass rusher and a run defender to create that forward momentum, create that leverage into contact in those spots. And what that all allows him to do is find vision and then again find cutback lanes. Discipline can kind of get off here, especially again consistently a contain role. I think that's something that if you asked him to, you could probably dial that in, but consistently falling into a contain role, sometimes that can kind of go out the window, it feels like a little bit, specifically because of the flexion that he carries. It also opens up that ability to kind of win second effort wins. That's a huge part of his game, and from the interior, I think that's what you're looking for. Usually look for guys that can clap the pocket, create walk back, and he does that. He's one of the best walk back players that I've ever watched, to be honest, on the interior. Just that ability to create it so naturally and so easily within his game. It's a real problem. It is a real problem, and that's what you want from the interior. They always talk about just guys that can collapse. He's going to bring that to the table. And then you bring it on to the final aspect, which is kind of the motor and the energy that he plays with. I mean, he may play too many snaps at times, which I think is great for us because it allows Broderick opportunities. There's games where he played 50 snaps, games where he played closer to 30. I don't think you consistently want him at the 50-plus snap thing. He can handle it. He's done it. And usually his energy is always there, especially when he's around the ball. Occasionally you'll see him kind of like, okay, I'm not chasing down that play. But I never really had an issue with his motor. I just think that if you could take some snaps away, it would be ideal. It absolutely would be. Maybe we can get him down to 35, 40 snaps a game. If Broderick can become a little bit rotational for us there, whoever that may be on the interior, whether that's Pecco, more Levi and Aleem, whatever that may be, having that would probably help us out a little bit to kind of pull some snaps back. That's what I would think you'd want to do here. So there's going to be an opportunity for Broderick. That's the thing. DJ Ritter's not going to play every snap, but he has shown the ability to be capable. What I love, though, it's the vision, especially as a run defender, but also as pass rusher, getting into passing lanes, that effort. It's the leg drives that he brings, the second effort, which is very consistent, and that late vision as a pass rusher. He plays with a really good motor, and it's very consistent, something that you'll like to see, especially because he's in the backfield and because he lives at or behind the line of scrimmage a lot against the run. So overall, to me, man, DJ Reader was an absolute steal for us because it's exactly what we needed. We've been searching for it for years now, and with Aleem McNeil kind of ascending, finding his role, ability to win one-on-one against single blocks, now you bring a guy in here that perfectly not only fits in schematically because of all the versatility and similarities, but also he fits in perfectly next to Aleem McNeil, brings us an elite run defender. Defensive statistics have been great. That doesn't always mean, though, every player is playing extremely well. Sometimes you have to throw extra bodies to that, and I think, I was watching Tampa Bay today in the playoffs. We weren't great against the run in that game, so that ability to do that is going to help a ton. He has the ability to open up other guys if you want him to. I don't really see that as much as against the pass rush because you're constantly a center to guard if you're bringing four-man rush is going going to deal with one of the interior offensive linemen. That's typically the case. It's usually how it works. And then most teams are going to chip Aiden Hutchinson. That's not going to change, right? Running backs will stay in to help out against us. Those things won't change. But to me, it's more so about the aspect of if he is one-on-one, he's capable of winning. So the fact is that if Aleem gets 2 and he gets 1, he's capable of winning single blocks. That's the big thing there. It's not about, to me, as much as like he's going to clear up Hutchinson. That could be an aspect, but he's always going to get extra attention. But it's more so about the flexibility of how you can rush him, and specifically the fact that he and Aleem have both being able to win one-on-one. Now those two can really bounce off each other, because in a normal 5-man protection against a 4-man rush, only one of those guys are going to get 2. And if it was going to be Aleem McNeil, which a lot of times it was, the one-on-one on the interior, we weren't consistently winning over the last few years. That's a big reason why we signed Alualu, and he made some plays in that playoff game. This is where the difference comes into play. So I'm going to leave right there. DJ Reader's an absolute game changer. I think he completely changes our defense. It's been a missing ingredient for years here. It's the reason we drafted Broderick. It also should help us against mobility of quarterbacks because he can take up more gaps. So if by the numbers game you said, hey, we want to free up a defender, now having a guy that can handle multiple gaps can allow you to potentially open up some opportunities for second-level players to be a little bit more free in what their responsibilities are to deal with mobile quarterbacks. So with that, DJ Reader is a Lion. I give this an A+. I really don't think they could have done any better. The fact that they got it on a 2-year deal makes it an A+ to me. I'm going to have to be a 3-year deal, and I didn't love that, but I love it for 2. For Broderick's growth, it fits in perfectly with us. It's an A+. It is a must-have, and the Lions nailed the perfect fit on the market, and really the perfect type of player in terms of the FBI and the way that he plays the game. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.